There are no clocks here, no calendars, no tomorrow. Time doesn't flow, it simply suffocates. For the 40 faces or lack thereof huddled in this concrete box, only one creed holds true absolute silence or instant annihilation. It's inspection day. The guard, a phantom in uniform, patrols with the lethal economy of a predator. His gaze is a blade, his hand, slow and heavy, checks the ragged seams of their pockets. He pauses. His fingers find it. He pulls it out. A worthless treasure. 5 kernels of grain. The air collapses under a collective frozen shock. The 9-year-old girl on me is seized. There are no cries. She accepted her fate long ago. Tears are a luxury only the dead can afford. She is forced to her knees on the chilling, damp floor. The guard remains silent. He lets the weapon speak. The thick wooden club descends. It is not anger but ritual. 1, 2, 3. The sickening, wet thud against bone. 14, 15. On me's spine arches with each impact. 27, 28. The other children, skeletal and shaking, watch in a terror so profound it paralyzes them. Pity died here years ago. Only the desperate, icy logic of self-preservation survives. They pray the violence remains focused elsewhere. The beating does not end until An-mi's body finally yields, collapsing into a motionless heap. She is left there, a discarded piece of raw material. Hours later, under the blanket of night, the older inmates carry her back. She is gone before morning. Dead for the possession of 5 kernels of grain. She and the witnesses are not students. They are inmates in Kwan-li-so 14, North Korea's most guarded, most deadly political prison camp. This is not reform. This is a factory for fear, a place willingly compared to the Soviet Gulag and the Nazi death camps. But here is the ultimate horror. An-mi was executed for breaking a rule. Rule number 3. We are entering a world where the rule is the sovereign power, and humanity is a capital offense. We must ask, how did this system turn a family into bitter rivals, and a child into a criminal? And how did one man, the only documented survivor born and raised inside this terror, ever manage to claw his way out? The death of An-mi was not an anomaly. It was a precise, terrifying lesson that survival here demands the sacrifice of human connection. But the true horror of Kwan-li-so 14 isn't just the brutality, it's the scale and the secrecy. For decades, Camp 14 was a dark whisper on the global stage. Even today, the regime denies its existence. Yet our investigation reveals the impossible truth. Look at the data. This complex, hidden deep in the mountains of Kichon, is estimated to sprawl across 155 square kilometers, making it nearly 3 times the size of Manhattan. It is secured not just by watchtowers, landmines, and heavily armed patrol routes, but by a chilling, natural fortress, a 60-kilometer-long fence of high-voltage wire and the swift, icy barrier of the Taedong River. This is the total control zone, a terrifying name for a place that legally functions outside of all human jurisdiction. But why does this place exist? It's not simply for political dissenters. The vast majority of its victims are condemned by a terrifying legal principle known as Yånjwa, or guilt by association. Imagine a system where your father is accused of espionage, and not only is he executed, but you, your mother, and your children up to 3 generations are dragged away and imprisoned for life. You don't have to commit a crime, you just have to be born into the wrong lineage. As human rights expert Greg Scarlett Toyu profoundly stated, you don't have to be an anti-regime character. You just have to be suspected of being a wrong thinker, of having engaged in wrong associations, and they will send you to the camp. This system of inherited guilt is the foundation of Camp 14. Its prisoners are not simply detained, they are enslaved to fuel the regime's economy. The most critical information we hold comes from those who managed to breach this fortress. These files reveal the 10 commandments of the camp, a set of rules so severe that the smallest infraction is an instant death sentence. We must understand these rules because they are not arbitrary laws. They are psychological tools designed to destroy human empathy and enforce betrayal. And this brings us back to our central figure, Shin Dong Hyuk. His life is the definitive roadmap of this horror. He was not dragged in, he was birthed into this total control zone. If the outside world operates on freedom, Camp 14 operates on a singular, brutal inverse absolute isolation. This isn't just about barbed wire, it's about isolating the mind until all human instinct for kinship and love is eradicated. Our central figure, Shin Dong Hyuk, knew nothing else. He was born here, a living, breathing testament to the camp's terrifying permanence. His birth was not a miracle, it was a production target. Shin's parents didn't fall in love, they were assigned a reward marriage by the guards, a clinical transaction designed solely to generate future laborers. Intimacy was forbidden, but production was encouraged. Shin's home was a crude hut, shared with 3 other families, with no sanitation or running water. The overwhelming, constant reality was hunger. Shin's childhood was a relentless battleground. To him, his mother was not a source of comfort, she was a direct rival in the relentless, icy war for survival. The unwritten law was clear: every calorie belongs to the self. Shin often risked a vicious beating to sneak bites of his mother's meager ration while she toiled for 15 hours in the rice fields. She beat him savagely, yet he repeated the crime. That was the grim, essential curriculum of Camp 14. He had no moral concept of right and wrong, only the immediate, transactional necessity of survival. When he witnessed An Mi's death for 5 kernels of grain, he didn't register pity or fear. He felt a chilling certainty she deserved it. She had violated the logic of the camp. This psychological breakdown is precisely the goal of the 10 commandments of the camp, the rules taught to every child in the facility's dilapidated schoolhouse. These rules are the true guards of the total control zone. They substitute empathy with ruthless self-preservation, turning neighbors and family into spies and potential executioners. Rule number 1: any witness to an attempted escape who fails to report it will be shot immediately. Rule number 3: anyone who steals or conceals any foodstuffs will be shot immediately. Rule number 5: anyone who holds or hides a fugitive's possessions, conspires with him, or fails to report him will be shot immediately. This isn't law, this is systematic terror, enforced by guards who carry weapons and teach obedience above all else. Shin memorized them all. These commandments were not shackles. They were the very air he breathed, the only moral framework he had ever known. Shin's days were a grueling loop split between the classroom and brutal labor in the coal mine, starting at the age of 6. The long workdays were only made worse by the constant, gnawing hunger that never left. The smallest mistake in the mine, a misplaced pickaxe, a moment of exhaustion, was met with immediate, savage physical punishment. His prison diet was a sludge of corn, cabbage, and salt. The only source of protein was often the rats they managed to catch and eat in secret. This isn't a nightmare you wake up from. This is simply reality for those born inside the wire. To understand the scope of this tyranny, we must look beyond the wire to the story of Kim Yang. Kim was in his mid-40s when he was dragged into Camp 14. He wasn't born there, he was a high-ranking military officer, accustomed to culture and privileges. His crime, the one his parents committed decades ago. His entire life was destroyed by Yånjwa. He was imprisoned, forced into the suffocating coal mines, simply because his father and brother were accused of spying years prior. Kim, unlike Shin, knew the difference between life and death. The harsh labor broke him quickly. Errors led to savage beatings with the butt of a gun, leaving him unconscious. After 2 months of this existence, Kim made a desperate calculation: suicide was preferable to this slow, deliberate dehumanization. Following a long workday, he intentionally pulled the safety pin on the mining shaft elevator from 2,000 feet up. He survived the fall. But the camp had already won the war for his spirit. This constant threat, this institutionalized fear, is the true essence of the total control zone. The guards ensure that every prisoner, from the official to the child, understands that their life is cheap, easily extinguished, and eternally conditional. This environment meticulously cultivated a single, powerful instinct in Shin Dong Hyuk: betrayal is the highest form of loyalty. This twisted loyalty, forged in starvation and fear, would soon be tested in the most extreme, horrifying way possible. Shin Dong Hyuk existed in the camp for 15 years with his humanity sterilized. Then came the first crack. In his mid-teens, a shift in camp boundaries placed his village near the slightly less savage Camp 18. As a reward for exemplary obedience, Shin was allowed to visit his mother's hut. There, he found an unexpected guest: his older brother, Shin Higan, a stranger united only by the assignment that brought them forth. That night, in the profound darkness of the hut, Shin woke to whispers. His mother and brother were talking low and frantic. They were planning to escape. Shin's reaction was not hope, nor fear for them. It was pure icy rage. A violation of the sacred law. Rule number 1, the rule that guaranteed his very existence, was being shattered. If they succeeded, or even failed without him reporting, he faced immediate execution. His entire worldview, defined by the 10 commandments, screamed at the treason. His survival was being jeopardized by this act of unthinkable human audacity. Driven by a logic colder than the concrete floor, Shin knew his duty. He rushed to the night guard. He not only reported the escape plot, but went a terrifying step further to guarantee action. Shin willingly signed a false police statement claiming he witnessed his mother and brother planning murder. This conscious, deliberate fabrication sealed the execution order. He did not seek justice. He sought self-preservation, proving his absolute loyalty to the system that bred him. The guards responded with clinical efficiency. Shin was ordered to attend. He was brought to the execution site by the Taedong River. They dragged out his mother and his brother. As the firing squad prepared, Shin felt a perverse sense of relief. He had done his duty. He had survived. His mother, before being executed, looked directly at Shin. Her eyes, filled with an emotion he couldn't comprehend, became the final image etched into his mind. He watched as his family was killed, a witness by the rules he so meticulously followed. Shin walked away the perfect prisoner, but inside, a moral wound far deeper than any beating had been carved. He had traded the lives of his only family for the certainty of his own survival. This was the ultimate victory of Camp 14. The betrayal of his mother and brother secured Shin's physical survival, but it didn't purchase peace. The memory of his mother's final gaze became a haunting scar. Yet, for years, Shin continued his routine: the coal mine, the relentless hunger, the brutal adherence to the rules. But the seeds of freedom, once planted by his brother, could not be completely sterilized. We must first look at the rarity of escape through the parallel story of Kim Yang. Kim, the former high-ranking military officer, survived his suicide attempt and was transferred to the slightly less brutal Camp 18. There, he reunited with his 70-year-old mother. Watching her endure beatings and endless forced labor, Kim made a new, desperate choice: escape. His method was intelligence, not force. He quietly studied the camp's operation, finally spotting an open coal train car. He observed that grain, likely spilled during a transfer, was scattered at the bottom. Amidst the chaos of prisoners scrambling for the meager food scraps, Kim squeezed into a narrow space beneath a metal panel and, against all odds, rode the coal train out of Camp 18. He was free from the wire, beginning an epic journey through China to asylum in South Korea. His escape proved that Camp 18, unlike Camp 14, offered a theoretical sliver of hope. Shin Dong Hyuk, however, was later sent back to Camp 14 after a series of failed transfers. His desperate desire for freedom manifested in 2 botched attempts to crawl under the fence. Both times, he was recaptured immediately. His punishment was the definitive statement of the camp's philosophy: torture. He was thrown into a special detention center, a place with no purpose but inflicting agony. His arms were tied up, pulled backwards, and his body subjected to searing burns. He spent 6 months in a pitch-black, solitary cell, barely large enough to lie down. He emerged bearing physical marks that would never fade, scars of his torture and deformities in his arms, undeniable, physical evidence of the camp's reality. It was after his release back into the general prison population, while working in a garment factory, that Shin met Park Young. Park was the antithesis of Shin, born into an elite family, widely traveled, and possessing a profound understanding of the world outside the barbed wire. Park talked of the world's colors, its culture, and its freedoms, concepts entirely foreign to Shin. By this point, Shin knew he was on the execution list, a liability the camp would eventually erase. With Park as his unlikely mentor, Shin began planning what would be his third, and final, escape. The plan was audacious: to breach the 10-foot-high fence lined with high-voltage barbed wire near the outer mountains. Shin, obsessed with the geography of the wire, had identified long gaps between guard patrols. As dusk fell, creating soft shadows over the snow, Shin and Park crept toward the fence. They pretended to stack wood, hacking branches until the moment was right. Shin grabbed Park's hand. They ran. Park reached the fence first. He tried to squeeze his head between the 2 lowest wires. The wire bucked, and Park's body went instantly still. He had hit the current. His lifeless weight bent the lowest wire, creating a momentary narrow gap. Shin, propelled by a desperate, terrifying will, crawled over his friend's motionless body. He was almost clear when his legs slipped, contacting the wire. The high voltage tore through him. His pants charred, his skin instantly seared from ankle to knee. But using Park's body as a conductor brake, Shin made it through. He ran for 2 hours straight, never looking back at the smoking remains of his final link to humanity. He was free. Shin ran for 2 straight hours, the stench of burned flesh clinging to his legs, finally crossing the Taedong River and into China. His journey to freedom was far from over. It took nearly 2 years of treacherous travel before he finally reached asylum in South Korea. He survived. but the cost was immeasurable. Today, those camps persist. According to human rights organizations, the camps are changing, but not for the better. Camps near the border have been moved further inland, and new inner perimeters are appearing, designed to make escape impossible and ensure total extermination for those who try. Up to 120,000 people remain imprisoned under the same terrifying logic of inherited guilt. The guards still enforce the rules, and the torture continues right now. Shin Dong Hyuk eventually adjusted to life outside the wire, becoming an advocate for human rights. But his history is complex. In 2015, Shin retracted parts of his story, admitting he had altered certain key details about the events and locations of his torture. We present this fact because it is crucial. Experts widely believe these changes, the suppression of painful or shameful memories, are common reactions among severe trauma victims. As Greg Scarlett Toyu confirmed, the fundamental truths remain. Was Shin a political prisoner? Yes. Did he witness the execution of his mother and brother? Yes. Did he bear the scars of unimaginable torture? Undeniably. He bears the physical and moral scars of the total control zone. He betrayed his family and his final companion, Park Young. But who is the real criminal? The true lesson of Camp 14 is this: the system itself didn't just punish crime, it mandated the destruction of human morality to ensure its own survival. Shin Dong Hyuk's story is not merely one of escape, it is the chilling, definitive story of the human spirit fighting to salvage what little remains of its own soul. If you want the secret files to keep uncovering stories the world tries to hide, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.